My name is Victor. I am the occult technician, and this is Mind War. Mind War is sponsored by Victory Work Apparel. Use promo code Mind War. Join the Mind War today. Enlist at patreon.com/mindwar. Now, back to the show. Welcome back to Mind War, folks. I appreciate you being here. We have a lot to cover today, so let's get started. Folks, today we're going to pick up where we left off in the book Magic, History, Theory, Practice by Dr. Ernst Schertl. And in the second half of today's video, we're going to continue down my magical journey. And we have a pretty spicy story today, so you're going to want to stick around for that one. But for now, we're going to pick up on page 23, again in the book Magic, History, Theory, Practice by Dr. Ernst Schertl. And on page 23, we start with this bottom paragraph. And it says this: the professional magician had the task to use his art everywhere particularly difficult, important, or holy things were involved. So again, the professional magician had the task to use his art, right? So art plays a big part in magic. Again, some call it the dark arts, right? And it's, again, like we talked about in the last episode, cooking can be an art, gardening can be an art, whatever your profession is, you are an artist in your profession, even if it's something like engineering. So art is going to play a big part in this, and it's going to be your job to find your medium, your artistic medium. How do you want to speak through your art, right? But everywhere else, where the common man used magic, so to speak, for his domestic purposes, the individual himself performed it. Similar to today, where he only take medical advice in serious cases, but treat minor cases with the use of widely known domestic remedies. Usually the house father or an elderly member of the extended family is the person who owns the magic recipes and has the authority to perform the required ceremonies. Because not every person is able to and allowed to perform every kind of magic, even if he knows the handles, formulas, etc. that are involved. Now again, they're talking here about maybe just treating minor scrapes and bruises, right, as the medicine man. That's your form of art. Or just in our regular life today, I'm sure that there is someone in your household who is the ambulance, the doctor, right? They're going to come in and they're going to take care of little cuts and bruises and scrapes and bumps that people might have and take care of them, right? And so, again, maybe that's a different type of magic. Sometimes it's even the simplest things, right? Just taking care of a scrape or a bump or a bruise, or cooking a meal, or doing ceremonial ritual magic like we're talking about here. So this next paragraph is one that I highlighted, and it says this: magic is always dangerous, is always a trial of strength between the one who performs the magic and the forces he invokes. That is to say, the demonic things, or simply the demons. Out of this distinctive feature of struggle originates the aristocratic characteristic, which from the beginning was part of all magic, and despite its comprehensive human basis hallmarked it as the privilege of the selected few. That's right. We are a selected few who have aristocratic characteristics. And what does he mean by this struggle, this force that invokes the demons, right? So again, we'll get into this more as we go through, but I talked about this in a video before. When we talk about demons, right, one of the things that we see today, and this is the example that I like to use, is the 7 deadly sins, right? Things like greed and wrath and pride and lust, all of these type of things. They're each represented by a different demon, right? Lucifer and Satan and, all the different demons that we know of, all the different characters have been assigned to these human traits. That's truly what I think demons are, right? They are the human traits within us that we have to, again, as the book says, maybe tame or become the master of, right? But really what I found is it's more communing with, getting on the same page as your demon. And again, if the demon represents basic human characteristics, right? Lust, a perfect example, a natural occurring human need for reproduction. When it is taken to an extreme, as we've talked about before, it becomes unhealthy for you, and you go in search of all sorts of more erotic and strange type of ways to perform your desires, right? To carry or fulfill your desires. It gets more and more extreme, right? Or the opposite end of that pendulum, of the lust pendulum, is everything is bad and you should feel guilty about any natural desires that you have. But again, where is that place where we can meet in the middle? Where is that extreme center, that center X, that we can come together where it's not the extreme, wild things that you're going to do over here, or the extreme where everything is bad and you should feel guilty for everything that you do? That's what it means to commune with these demons. Understanding them, gaining some self-control, right? But again, not doing it in a way where you're going to chastise yourself and demonize yourself for it, but also where you're not going to go off the rails, okay? And so again, that's part of that struggle that we have with our demons, okay? But again, what happens is when you go through that whole list of demons, and as you see, there's a long list of them, and they all represent different human characteristics that we have to deal with every day, right? What happens is as you start to work through them, and as you commune with each of your demons, and as you start to find that center with each one of them, with each one of these human characteristics, you become a more stand-up person. You become someone who is more centered and focused and reliable, and people are going to turn to you. You are going to become more aristocratic. You're going to become more professional, a professional magician, if you will, right? But again, it's always dangerous because you're going to be testing yourself. You're going to be putting yourself into situations where you're going to have to test your limits. And that's where the danger arises. But again, there's no fear here in the mind war. So we don't go into these tests, these trials that we put ourselves in with a sense of fear. We go into it knowing that we are about to commune, grow stronger, and become aristocratic professional magicians. The magical type of man was the one who dominated and defined all primeval cultures. The magician was in all early times identical with the ruler, be it as a chieftain or as priest or as both combined in one. He acts as an intermediary between the profane reality and the world above. He himself radiates forces which exceed the normal. He is in reality the superior and the highest, and so it is natural that he also holds worldly power in his hands. Even later on, by the time the worldly power usually cuts itself off from the spiritual, it is still the magician, the priest, who represents supreme authority and before whom all princes and kings have to bow. But not until the end of civilization, by the time the connection to the world above diminishes more and more, does the magician step back from his dominating position. The hierarchical structure of the people disintegrates. And with regard to every supernatural thing, every individual has to start completely from scratch. That's right, the magician in reality is superior and the highest, and as so can also hold the powers of nature in our hands here in the world, right? So again, one of the things that we do through magic is we, just like we did with the Gateway Experience tapes, we take our innermost thoughts, the things, the emotions, the feelings, the troubles that we're having, the existential crises that we may be going through, we take them from the inside and we push them out into the universe. We ask the absolute, the cosmic dynamic force, God, whatever you want to call it. We send our most internal things outward. We stop looking for the answers inward, okay? Because again, what happens is when you try to consciously solve your own problems inwardly, okay, you're often going to be coming at it at a time where you're tired, you're exhausted, you're frustrated, you've already tried to fix these things and they can't work, and you're spinning your wheels. Everything that you do seems to just cause more problems, right? That's when you need to stop. That's when you need to stop and say, I'm going to quit trying to fix all these things my own way. I'm going to send the question out. I'm going to ask for help outwardly. That is the as above, so below. It comes from internally. We ask the questions, we send it outwards. The answer comes back to us. But again, it all comes from within, right? All that stuff out there, all the stuff in the universe, the cosmic dynamic force, the absolute and God, all of it is just within us. We have to send it out so we can step outside of ourselves, so we can step outside of our exhausted nature, so we can step outside of our frustration, right? And then we clear our minds, we relax a little bit, we send that question out, and then allow the answer to come back. So we do this in the other realm, in the abyss, right? But doing so, as you're working in these other arenas, these spiritual realms, they do start to have an effect on the real world. And it might just be small at first. It might be very small. Something like you're starting your magical practices for the very first time and you realize, okay, I need to prepare my altar, but man, my room is a real mess and I need to clean my room up a little bit first before I do this. And maybe it's something as simple as that. It's just that first step towards changing the physical world around you in order to start to mirror the growth and potential and strength that you're building inside through your magical practices. Again, this is all practice. This is all something that you're going to be doing over and over and over again. It's going to become your routine, but in a good way. It's going to be a routine that you create. It's your time. You schedule it when you want, and it's an uplifting thing. That's the beauty of what we're doing here, right? It's not a chore. It's an uplifting practice. So let's go on here. It says, the gruesome otherworldly bringing to life of natural things, which is the basis of all magic, produces the worldview that is known to us from so-called primitives as animism, pan-animism, or as inspiring of nature, pan-physical. For the primordial man, things are dark, vivid essentialities. Everything is surrounded by a holy horror, which itself signifies a source for forces by which magical effects become possible in the first place. This early animism should not be confused with pantheism, of the later time periods, because animism is something that is entirely specific, is really polytheism, but not lukewarm monotheism, which directly precedes the disappearance or the complete disappearance of God or gods. Okay. So this otherworldly force that we're working with has dark, vivid essentialities. He describes them as a holy horror, which is amazing. And I think even what he's really talking about here is just animated life, the life force in us that keeps us all going, not just us, but everything in this planet. And they are holy in a way, as in they are miraculous and amazing to look at, but they are also horrifying in their own way because we know the power in them. Something like the ocean. I used to love swimming in the ocean when I was younger, healthier man, living in Southern California. I spent almost every day at the beach. Today, the ocean scares me, right? I don't know that I would be out there swimming the same way that I used to, because I got knocked around a few times by some pretty wild waves. And that's a perfect example of the power. We show reverence to the waves because we know that the ocean is probably one of the most powerful natural sources on the planet. We enjoy swimming in, but we understand the horror that it brings because it can wipe you out in just a second, right? But one thing that's really interesting here is the author says that when we keep going along the path that we are now, and we've talked about this before, where we are being forced into this bottleneck of monotheistic religions. We're only really allowed to believe in the top three, right? The Judeo-Christian or Islamic paradigm, the fairy tale that started all those thousands of years ago. Those seem to be our top three options that we have here, especially in the West, which is totally insane that we've gotten to this point somehow. And outside of those three, you might be able to practice things like yoga or, a little bit of mysticism from the East or something like that. But even that is not really widely accepted in Western culture. We're being forced into, again, this bottleneck. And I believe the people that are behind it really, truly want us to all be part of the same religion, worshiping one singular God. And the author here again says, if we're not careful, this type of, this direction that we're in is going to precede the complete disappearance of God or gods. And that's what's happening right now. All the other gods that have been around for, humanity's existence, they're being wiped out. We're being told that they are all evil and there's only one monotheistic God who, as far as I understand, his name is Yahweh. He was a tribal god from the Middle East. He is a wind god, a war god, and he has kind of usurped the throne of the true absolute, the real creator of the universe, of life, all of those type of things, the cosmic dynamic force that we're so desperately trying to get a grasp on here. All of those, the truth of who is in charge here, the truth of who created all of us is being wiped out, is being, again, demonized and being taken over by this monotheistic God, this one God that if we are not careful, we are all going to be forced to worship very soon. To me, from what I understand, it sounds like the people who are working on this are very close to getting exactly what they want, and that is a world with only one God, and we have to be very careful. So we'll go on here. It says, animism shows early on, in contrast to pantheism, a distinct tendency to compression, to concentration, or concertization of the demonic, just as we have already learned with regard to manna. That is to say, certain things are considered to be outstandingly demonic, whereas the demonic nature of the remaining things sinks to a harmless and therefore profane level. Okay. So again, that those demonic forces within us, those are things that we have to commune with and understand better. Gluttony is another perfect example. Gluttony is when you're overeating, right? You become obese or morbidly obese because you are addicted to food. The food has become some type of drug to you. It's filling needs in your emotional life, possibly, that you aren't able to fill through other means, right? That's the bad side. You've eaten too much, right? And now you are gluttonous. The gluttony, again, is represented by a demon. We have a demonic character that represents gluttony, okay? Now, the other side of that pendulum is when you are anorexic or bulimic and you're starving yourself to death, okay? That's the other demonic side of gluttony. It's the opposite side. Again, we have to understand our demonic nature, that we need to feed ourselves, not through gluttony with trash, or not starve ourselves by not eating anything. We need to find that healthy center, the center X, where we, enjoy food. Food needs to be enjoyable to a certain extent, but it also, most importantly, is fuel. Food is fuel, and it helps us, it keeps us healthy. And you have to be healthy in order to do magic, I think, right? Right. Of course, there are certain levels of health. I am not in any way the poster child for being a very healthy person. I have my own health issues that I deal with. But really, I think what I'm talking about here is I don't think that I could have done any of the magical practices that I've worked on over the last few years if I would have continued to be an alcoholic like I was. If I was drinking daily, or if I was trying to drink while I was doing magic, I just don't think it would have worked. I think it would have turned out to be a real disaster. That isn't to say that alcohol can't play a part in your magical rituals. If it's something that you completely have control over and you use small amounts of alcohol to get into your somnambulism, your state of meditation, if that's something that you need to do, maybe it can be part of it. Just be very careful. Again, alcohol is poison. And I really, truly don't think that, again, if I would have been drinking on a daily basis, that this magical journey would have turned out the way it has. I think it would have been a disaster, right? So again, this next part is something that I highlighted here. It says, since the beginning, there also existed a distinct tendency to individualization. That is to say, certain people feel allocated to certain demons. Family demons and tribal demons come into existence. In certain circumstances, even pure individual demons, which are only worshipped by one man. So that's pretty interesting. I know in India, there are, I think, millions or even billions of gods there. And from what I understand, people in India have their own gods. They literally talk about their an individual spirit that is attached directly to them. I like that idea. I like the idea of researching that more. Instead of, again, the monotheistic religion where there's only one God or one spirit that's helping you. I believe the Indian culture, again, from India, not North American Indians, right? I believe they have millions or even billions of spirits that they can turn to and learn about. I think that's great. I think it's really interesting. Let's see. Oh, and then it says there's family and tribal demons. So a friend of mine, again, I've talked about my friend Nathan. He is the one who died of a fentanyl overdose just a few months before I moved back home. he was married, and his wife, when I returned back home, she was in pretty rough shape, which I completely understand. Her husband had just died a few months prior, and over time, over the next year or two, as I tried to communicate with her and befriend her and things, she would tell me more and more about the issues that she's talking about and dealing with, because again, she was in pretty bad shape, and she talked about these kind of family demons, right? And I said, okay, well, here's what I'm doing. I'm trying to learn these demons. I'm trying to work with them. I'm listening to the Gateway Experience tapes. They've been helping me a lot. This was in my early days. I said I've been using the magic mushrooms, and all of this has been very therapeutic, and it's really working. And I said I want to help you understand your family demon, and maybe you can overcome it, right? And so I put together like a care package for her, and at first she seemed very interested in it, and then as I started to really hand it to her and started to talk to her more about it, her face just changed. Right? It was like all the blood in her face just rushed out. And it was almost as if her face was starting to melt off. It was very strange. She looked like a very different person. She looked demonic. She looked like someone who the pendulum had swung so far in whatever this demonic issue is that she was dealing with. The pendulum had swung too far. Right? And you could see that it was making her sick, whatever this issue is that she was trying to deal with. And she talked again about these family demons, how it feels like they're passed from one generation to the next. And I said, well, let's figure it out. Here's the stuff. And again, the face melted. She screamed at me. She started to cry, and she just, left. I was like, all right, whatever. Okay. And again, those of you that have been around for a while, that caused some very, a lot of trouble in my personal life, because then she went and told family and friends that I'm some weird guy doing magic with demons, and they all started going crazy. And even one guy, a family friend, contacted my mother, my late mother who passed away recently, saying, your son practices demons. I don't want him around my family. I'm like, dude, our families have been friends for almost 4 decades, and you're telling me that I can't be around all of you because I work with demons or whatever, because I'm doing magic? Get out of here. And of course, he was a Catholic weirdo. When my mother was literally on her deathbed, he came and was like, I just need 10 minutes with her. I just want to preach the gospel to her. I was like, get the fuck out of here, dude. What? I mean, just these people are out of their minds. They are out of their minds. It's crazy. And as we go through it, there's going to be more examples like this of what we're up against, right? Gosh. Let's go on here. Alfred Lehman, again, we've heard about him. He was, I think, like a reporter who was working with these different tribes, right? So it goes on here to say, Alfred Lehman reports on the Negroes from the coast of Guyana. He says this: once someone of them decides to carry out something important, the first thing he does is to search for a god to help him in his endeavor. With this in mind, he goes out and declares the first living creature that appears to be a god, a dog, a cat, or even one of the most primitive animals. Also, a non-living object that he finds on his way is possible, a stone, a piece of wood, or whatever else it is at that moment. He then immediately makes a sacrifice for this new god, explains his endeavor to him, and vows that he will recognize and worship him as his god in the future if his endeavor succeeds. This report brings to light how closely magic is, in its essence, connected with animism and demonism, and how far apart it is from the play we can find in atheistic theosophy, which has a wishing force that is only intellectual. That is a very cool paragraph right there, okay? So, early man, these were, again, from the Negro tribes of Guyana, okay? His words, not mine. But when a young man needed to set out on some type of journey, some type of project, right? He would first think about what he needs to do. So now he's visualizing it in his mind. We've talked about how important visualization is. And then he goes out and says, I'm going to send this work that I need to do, this project I need to do, I'm going to send it out into the universe. And when he does that, he's going to say, whatever animal that I see in front of me, or even any type of rock or tree or any type of plant or anything, I am going to recognize that as representing the spirit of the God who is going to work with me on this project, right? And when that project becomes successful, I will now, worship that God as someone who worked with me to help be successful in whatever his endeavor is, right? I think that's very interesting. I think that's great. And here's why, okay? When you go back and you look at the very first episode of the Mind Warp podcast, in the very first few minutes, the first thing that I talk about is that when I started this podcast, that month I had pulled the card of Lucifer, right? Lucifer, again, a demon that represents knowledge, okay? And the commitment that I made to Lucifer at the time, and it wasn't just to Lucifer, this was to all of the demons. When I started this demonology, this was my commitment to them. And I said this, and this was the deal with the devil, if you will. I said, if you all show me the power that's out there, if you show me the truth that is out there, if you help me understand what occultism and magic, what it truly is, right? No more of the lies. If you show me the truth, then I will promote you. Through my work, I promote the demons. You see it on my Instagram. You're seeing it here in the podcast. My job is to promote them in what they can do, okay? And with me holding up that end of the bargain, which I am doing right now by making this podcast, this is me holding up my end of the deal, right? They have shown themselves to me by helping me make these major transformations in my life. And those are all things that we've talked about. This transformation has really just occurred in the last few months after 3 years of work. And we're going to talk more about how those transformations happen later on in this episode. It's really amazing, right? I like that too, that says, when we actually do this, when we make a commitment to a spirit, when we find a spirit that we're going to work with and make a commitment to it, again, that's part of the communion, working together, partnership with these spirits, not trying to command them or, subjugate them, right? That works. That's what we need to do. Versus kind of, he says atheistic. I don't know if that's the best word for it, but he's saying, other people, it's more just wishing. I hope this happens, right? Those of you who have made vision boards, all of the things you want, you put in the vision board, but none of it ever seems to come true. Again, there's a couple of issues with that. One of the things with the vision board is it's our conscious saying, here's the things we think we need. Here's the things we think we want. That's not what magic does. Magic is going to give you the things you need that you didn't know you needed, right? It's going to provide such a better solution than the one you think in your mind. In your mind, you're thinking, I need to be famous, I need to be rich, I need this, I need that. None of that is what you need. What you're going to find is the magic will provide you with the solutions that you actually need. And that part's beautiful. And it gets away from just wishing. I wish I had the following objects that I cut out of a magazine and glued on a poster board. That's not what magic is for, right? I'm sure there's other way you can pray your way to that, or like here, you can wish force it. Okay. But that's not what we're doing here. So let's go on. It says the magic act itself signifies a very concrete anticipation, an obvious ceremony, and beforehand acts are performed to obtain what one demands from the demon. If, for example, one wants to have rain, an act is then performed that has a distant similarity to rain. If one wants to destroy enemies, war dances are arranged. If one wants to take possession of something, the act of taking, stealing, or robbing is imitated. Oftentimes, the ceremony can differ so much from the natural act that it is hardly possible for outsiders to identify both. Most often, a symbol is present that is only by indirect way of complicated and oftentimes arbitrary appearing associations connected to the natural image of the pertaining act. So again, you have to be very careful about going into these rituals and ceremonies and saying that you want a specific thing. Be careful about that. You might just get it, right? But, I don't know if you all have heard this kind of esoteric story of the monkey paw, right? And so the monkey paw is, you go to this occult store with all the occult accoutrements and all the little things that you can buy off the shelf, right? And you see this monkey paw there, and it has its fingers up. And on each finger, you make a wish. And as you do, the fingers go down, right? Until all the fingers are gone, you've used all your wishes, and now it's in a fist, right? And so what happens with the monkey paw is you are going to get exactly what you wanted, but it's going to come with baggage. It's going to come with consequences. Things aren't going to work exactly like you thought. So here's kind of an example of this, and we'll talk more about this as we go through, but my current situation, over the last year and a half, almost 2 years, I've been talking with my friend Callie, who is here, staying with me here, living here at the Mind WAR Estates now, with her daughter, the Moon Princess, right? And, for such a long time, we talked about them moving out here and that we could, live together and raise the Moon Princess together and how great that was going to be. And it has been amazing and it is amazing. But what happened, again, for those of you that are following along, when Callie came out to visit for the very first time, that's when my mother found out that she was sick with cancer. And my mother passed away just a few weeks before Callie and the Moon Princess moved out here. So this thing that we had wanted, and it's amazing that it has occurred, that we've been able to reconnect and kind of create this little family unit, right? It's bittersweet because I have to spend the majority of my time at the Mind WAR Manor caring for my father. Because again, my father has some dementia, right? The doctors said it was end-stage dementia. So again, that monkey paw, right? We got what we wanted, what we had planned for, but the situation didn't end up exactly how we thought it would. And that's okay, because it's better. Because now, the times that we do see each other, and we see each other every day, we spend time together every day, it's more important, right? We're so excited to see each other versus living together 24/7 all the time. It's nice to have this little bit of break from each other where we're so excited to see each other again the next day, right? So again, that's kind of that monkey paw effect. Be careful what you wish for, right? You're gonna get it, but again, how does it come about? There might be other things that happen that you weren't quite thinking, oh, this is what it's gonna be, right? Things change a little bit. But be open to it, because again, the magic is going to give you what you need, not exactly what you want. And there's a beauty in that. Be open to it. Be accepting of it, and be thankful for it. One could say that all magic was originally based on a kind of more or less stylized pantomime. That is to say, based on a part theatrical and part dancing presentation of what one wants to accomplish. This brings to light the magical origins of all ceremonial arts. But dance also plays, from another point of view, a big role in the old magic, namely as a creator of manic conditions and as a means to work off states of tension. So again, dance is a big part for a lot of ceremonial magic. I'm kind of an older guy. I do dance a little bit at the end as things are kind of winding down and I'm relaxing. I'm listening to the music that I like to listen to. I might shake it up a little bit, but nothing too much. But when I was a younger man, I mean, I was out there in the mosh pit at all the, Slayer, Suicidal Tendencies, WAR, Misfits, Metallica, Tool. I've seen all the big bands and all the big venues. I've been in every mosh pit, that's out there. And that took you into this state of being, right? This very powerful state of being. It was, it was a battle going into those mosh pits, right? So I can understand where dance could play, especially if you're a younger person, where dance could play a really big role in your ceremonial magic. Again, just to shake off the tension, even just to get into a place of relaxation where you can get your blood flowing, and now it's time to really get into the hypnotic state, right? I think that's great. All of these type of things can be used in your ceremonial magic. Again, whatever feels good to you, whatever works for you. It says, there have been and there still are dances which serve the purpose to artificially create states of ecstasy or possession, where the dancing person feels imbued with the god, and with this demonic completeness of power exerts magic effects. In this case, the dance directly creates the demonization, but at the same time also serves as an outlet. That is to say, by means of abreaction. This kind of dance expresses convulsive, paroxysmal strains of the body, and at the beginning wants nothing less than to be lovely. Their purpose is only to create a frenzy which will be facilitated by all kinds of other means, such as excessive fasting, sweating, flagellations, glaring light effects and sounds, as well as narcotic beverages and smoking. That's right. So, again, one of the beauties of doing magic, of ceremonial magic, ritual magic, one of the things that you're going to find is it's a time for you to really let it all out. Really express yourself in the ways you might not be able to do in your normal life, right? Again, through this manic, over-the-top type of dance, if that's what you're doing, whether it's dance or, we'll talk about later different types of movements that you can do. These are all expressive ways to get yourself into that state of mind for magic to really happen. And again, doing things like fasting, sweating, flagellations, again, hitting yourself, be careful with that. Don't hurt yourself or anyone else. Glaring light effects. Light plays a huge part in magic, and we're going to talk about that in the many different ways that it's going to help you, as well as sounds. Again, sound is massive when it comes to magic. That's through the Gateway Experience tapes, as we listen to those prior to doing our magical ceremonies. That's all sound-based. And then when we listen to the hypnotic music that keeps us in that state of somnambulance as we're doing our magic, of course, that sound plays a huge role there. And then, of course, narcotic beverages and smoking, aka magic mushroom tea, maybe smoking a little bit of marijuana or tobacco. These type of things are going to help us in that somnambulistic state of mind. Okay, so that's where we're at today, folks. We made it through a couple more pages here. Some very interesting stuff. That leaves us off on page 27 for when we pick up in the next episode. And in just a moment, we're going to continue on in my magical journey. We'll go back to my Instagram and find the next post. Again, kind of a spicy story. But that was our work today from the book Magic, History, Theory, Practice by Dr. Ernst Schertl. And we'll be back in just a moment. All right, welcome back, folks. We're going to continue working through my magical journey on my Instagram page at The Occult Technician on Instagram. Please give me a follow there. When we scroll all the way towards the bottom, we are looking at, I believe this is the third post that I made. Let me see if I can get down here. It's called Breaking the Bind. And I'm going to give you some background of what kind of led to this post in the first place. It's an interesting story. It's not something that I was prepared for when it was all occurring, and it took quite a while. I really had to step back from everything that had happened to really understand what had happened. You know, it was like, wait a minute, what just happened here? So a quick look at the post here. We see two candles, one black and one red. And there are two ropes, again, one black and one red, tied together, kind of in an infinity, a figure 8 shape wrapped around the candles. And as I look through the different pictures, the candles are burning down. They eventually catch the rope on fire, and the rope burns, okay? And I titled this one, Breaking the Bind. So what does that mean to be the bind, or to be bound by something? So here's what happened. Some backstory. So again, when I was a late teenager, I joined the United States Marine Corps. I left my home state here in Michigan in the late 90s, and I was stationed in Southern California, down in San Diego. I stayed in San Diego for 20 years, okay? Working for the Marine Corps as an active duty Marine, and then as a civilian for about 16 years while I was there. During that time, I was married. I got married. I had children, my Gemini twins. And after about a decade and a half, that marriage dissolved. Okay. So this was around the 2012 to 2014 timeframe, somewhere in there. The marriage had dissolved, and I found myself living alone as a single father, caring for my Gemini twins, which was amazing. They were teenagers at this time. They're very responsible. They basically took care of themselves. We were just best friends. And the next few years were honestly really great. It was very nice, very relaxing, a chill few years, family-wise, right? But after my divorce, of course, you know, like so many men, I started dating again. And so I was in my early 30s, and I went online and did the online dating thing. So the first woman that I met with online dating was Callie, the lady who is here living with me now, her and the Moon Princess. And as a quick side note, this is kind of fun. My very first date with Callie was at my friend Deog, my friend Joe, who's a member of the Judeo-Christian cult called the 12 Tribes of Israel, right? You've heard me talk about him. They are the ones who run the Yellow Deli, these delis that they run in order to keep their cult, have money coming into the cult. It's what their job is. We went to the Yellow Deli for our first date, so that's kind of a fun side note. But one thing with the dating apps is that you can meet more than one person. And so the second woman that I met after my divorce out in California, she is a very wonderful woman. She's the type of woman who breezes in and out of my life when I need her most. And when I first met her, she was, she's 15 years my junior, so I was about 33 at the time. I think she was 19 or 20 years old, right? And we dated for about a year, on and off. We had a lot of fun together. We went to concerts down at the beach. We went out to dinner a lot, and just, had a casual, fun relationship, right? And one of the things that struck me about her, even at her young age, is she is so intelligent and professional. There was just something about her that set her above the other people in my life, the people that I worked with, the people that I was close. There was just something about her, very intellectual, very smart, very intelligent, very professional. And that really drew me to her. It was nice to be able to have deep conversations with her that were multi-layered, right? It was very cool. And so after about a year of dating, she went off to university, of course, like young people do. And over the next few years, we stayed in touch. We were always emailing back and forth, texting once in a while. And she would tell me where she's at and who she's with and what she was doing, some of the successes in her life. She told me some of the failures in her life. But I always considered her to be one of my best friends. I still do to this day. And so what happened is in 2018, I decided to move back to my home state here in Michigan. So I left California when my Gemini twins turned 18. I was like, all right, I'm out of here. I told everyone that for years. Everyone knew that when my twins turned 18, I was out of there. And that's exactly what I did. And it felt amazing. It felt so good to finally be done. My time out there, that 20 years, I tell people I was doing time, right? I had to be in California. The divorce went well. Again, we'll talk about that another time, but I knew that even trying to leave the state, it would just complicate things, so I stayed there. To me, it was more important to be a father than it was to return home to my family here or carry on with a new life, anything like that, right? So when I finally did come home in 2018, I contacted all the people in my life that I had told, hey, I'm going to be moving back home someday. And so some of these were old friends that I hadn't talked to in a while. And this young lady was one of them. I said, hey, I finally moved back home. And she emailed me back. She was so excited for me. And so I started to inquire with her, what are you doing? Where are you at? And without giving away too many details, and again, this was in 2018, so this was right before COVID, right? Basically, she told me that she was living in what I describe as a third world paradise with a man that she used to be dating, right? And I said, okay, that's very interesting. You're no longer living in the United States. You're living in this, again, a third world island paradise, but still third world, still very scary when she told me about kind of what the living situation was like. And so I said, I just moved back home. I'm about to buy a house. I got a room for you. If you want to get out of that situation and come hang out with me, come hang. Let's do this, right? So she concocted a plan and basically escaped from this third world paradise. And she moved here to Michigan. And we lived together for the next 3 years. And in those 3 years, I watched her transform herself. And it wasn't until after that I realized what she had been doing. And it truly blew me away and set me on the path to practice magic the way that I started to, right? Okay, so throughout our time together, as she was living here with me, I would watch her do things that were definitely her practicing magic, right? Things that I thought were kind of cheesy at first, like oh, she's just an Instagram witch, right? I mean, that's all I am, right? But she would do things like use the smudge sticks, right? You light them on fire and you kind of cleanse the house, things like that. She would do her tarot card once in a while. And I would see those things. And again, at this point, I was still like, I don't know about all that stuff. This still seems very weird. I had moved past trying to be a believer in Christianity or any. I had long given up all of that stuff. I had given up kind of, politics and wanting to be whatever, right? And I thought it was odd. I thought it was cheesy. I didn't really think much of it until I started to, again, after all of the changes occurred and the transformation occurred, and I go, that's what she was doing. And what was amazing is there were other things that she would do that didn't stand out like magic, but I realized, oh, that's what she was doing. And one of them, and I know this sounds weird, is she worked so hard on doing I believe it's the yoga pose called the bridge, where you basically lean backwards and your hands touch the ground and your feet are on the ground and you're bent all the way backwards, right? She got a yoga ball. She would practice it all the time to do this bridge. And I thought that is so strange. And later on in the book, Magic, History, Theory, Practice, we'll understand and we'll talk about the bridge and why that is an important yoga pose to learn. Very strange, right? But it was watching that kind of stuff that I go, wait a minute, she really was practicing magic. And she used that magic to transform herself. Now, there was one particular event that stood out to me that caused me to create this Instagram post called Breaking the Bind, where I lit these candles and burned the string. So when she first moved here, we had to stay at my parents' house for a few days because we had some guys coming in to redo the hardwood floors here in the WAR Estates, right? I bought a very old house. It's over 100 years old. It had beautiful hardwood floors under all the carpets. I pulled them up, paid a little bit of money. It wasn't much, and had these guys come in and sand and stain the hardwood floors, and it looked amazing. So just days after it, we were coming back here to the WAR Estates. We're going to move in. We're starting to move furniture and stuff in. And she said, I want you to go downstairs. I'm going to get some things ready. And then when you come back, I want you to be ready to physically interact with me. Okay. All right. This sounds fun. This is great. I'm ready for this, right? So she calls me upstairs after maybe a half hour to an hour, right? And I'm like, well, I don't know what's going on, right? And so I go into the living room with these beautiful hardwood floors that were just finished, and in the middle of the living room. And this blew my mind. Again, she had only been here for a few weeks. I hadn't seen any of the magical stuff that I had talked to about earlier. I hadn't seen her do any of this. This was really the first introduction into, oh, this woman is a witch and she's practicing magic, right? So I come into the living room, and there in the middle of the living room floor on our brand new refinished flooring is a giant pentagram that she made out of salt, right? So she took a container of salt and made this giant pentagram, like 10 feet around. I mean, it was massive. And my very first thought was, what are you doing? You just poured salt on our brand new finished floors? Like, is this going to burn a pentagram into our brand new floors? And right away, that thought fled my mind because I was like, shut your mouth. You're about to have fun, so shut it. Right? So I bit my tongue, and I was like, okay, what are we doing here, right? So she pulls me into the middle of this pentagram. We prepare to enjoy ourselves, and at this point, she takes some red lipstick. Again, this is all embarrassing. I'm sure if she's listening, she's going to hate that I'm telling this, and I'm trying to do it as as politely as possible, okay? She took some red lipstick. I didn't have a shirt on at this point, and she wrote a symbol, a sigil on my chest, okay? To this day, I do not know what that symbol was. I don't know what the sigil was. I asked her about it one time, but she just blew me off. She did not answer the question of what it was. I asked her to draw it for me. She refused to. I have no idea what it was. But she drew this symbol on my chest with red lipstick. And then in the middle of this pentagram, we had relations. Okay. Very wild, very erotic. And during this session, her knees were on the hardwood floor. I'm trying to keep it as PG as I can here, folks. And her knees were bleeding. We did a blood ritual. We did from what looking back at it, because I wasn't privy to what was happening at the time. I was just enjoying the ride, right? But looking back, I think we did a magical blood sex ritual, and magic with a K. I believe sex magic is when you spell magic with a K, right? Again, that's not something that I have done as part of my magical practice. But this, I didn't really think anything of it at the time. I thought, well, that was pretty hot or whatever, right? That's cool. This chick is into this kind of stuff. I'll go along for it. Who cares, right? This is cool. No big deal. Little did I realize what that truly was. And to this day, I still don't fully know what it represented. But I think in a way it was sort of her marking me as a source that she can extract energy from in a sort of vampiric way. And I say that with nothing but love and happiness, and so glad that I could do that, right? Provide for her in that way. A lot of people, when they hear vampirism, vampires, they think of this evil way that people are draining energy from you without your consent or whatever. And in some ways, maybe that's what this was. I don't know. But there's no anger. I'm not upset about it or anything. It truly was just an interesting event, right? And so again, what happened is over the next few years, I watched her transform, physically, through just different procedures. I don't want to give too much of it away, but small things that, people normally do to enhance their appearance. There was some weight loss and some exercise and a lot of healthy eating. She started taking care of things financially, and she was getting promoted at work. And I was watching all of these things happening. And I realized, wow, again, afterwards, I'm like, man, she completely transformed herself in the 3 years that we were together. And so what happened, again, she came out in in 2018. And by the summer of 2021, okay, so again, the summer of 2021, think back to it. That is when the COVID lockdowns were finally released. We all got to kind of go back to normal, right? And I tell you, that's the summer when there were more girlfriends leaving their boyfriends behind than ever before. I think every woman who was stuck with their boyfriend for a year during the COVID lockdowns, if they weren't married with kids or whatever, they're like, I'm getting out of here. And that's exactly what she did. She bounced out that summer after 3 years. She had transformed herself. She became even more beautiful, more intellectual, more professional than I had ever seen her. She moved out with a friend, and, within just a short time, she met a wonderful guy. I believe that they're married now. He just seems like such a sweet guy. And I'm so thankful that they met each other and that they are creating this life together now, right? They're about, I think they live maybe a half hour away. It's not far, a cute little village around here. And I'm so thankful for them. I'm so glad that they were able to find each other, and that she was actually able to, find the man that she always needed, right? It wasn't me. It wasn't the other guys that she had dated, but I think she's found the one. And that's amazing. I'm thankful for that. And what happened is, again, afterwards, looking back at it, I said, holy shit, she used magic to transform herself. Maybe I got to give it a try. And again, it was in January 1st of 2022, just about 6 months after she left, that I started my magical journey. I used those 6 months after she left to prepare. Remember, we talked about these things a little bit. And, it's kind of funny is, again, when I started my magical practices, I shared it with family and friends way too early. I tried to speak with my mother about it. Again, those of you who are following along, Mother passed away a few months ago. But I remember when I first started talking about magic and stuff, she would say, oh, that woman taught you all that stuff. She brought all that evil stuff into your life. It's terrible, and it was just so funny. And I would say, no, that's not true. I've always liked this kind of stuff. I've always been into it. And I think Mother Mind War may have been correct. This woman really did introduce this stuff to me in a practical way and showed me what magical practice really is, right? So again, back to the Instagram post. So again, those early days where I was practicing magic in the beginning, it was all brought about through emotion. It was emotions that were raw. There was anger, there was sadness, depression. All of that was, it's very clear in my early days of art, right? And so part of that emotion was kind of working through the loss of this relationship. And that's why I set up these candles and I set up those ropes that were representing us being bound together by that ceremonial sex magic, right? She bound me with the sigil and I had to break that binding. I had to release myself from the bind that she had placed me in. And so that's what that represented, right? I saw it on TikTok, I think. Someone else doing it. But what I did is while it was happening, I put my emotions into it. I placed all of the sadness from our breakup into it. All the anger of, I'm not good enough for her. All of the nonsense that comes with a breakup. All of the feelings of self-doubt and all of the hatred that you may have for these other people. All of those things that are fake and lies. Again, the demonic spirits within us hitting the pendulums, right? Of course, after a breakup, you're very sad, you're very emotional. But again, once you start to heal and you step back from it, you say, okay, this probably was for the best. You appreciate the time that you had together, and then you grow and you move on from it, right? That's where that center is. So you're not mourning a relationship and being depressed forever. And you're not staying in a relationship that isn't working, but instead you're finding that center. And that's what we did. But again, in order to move forward with my magical practice, I had to break that bind. I had to say, you know what? Whatever magical connection you had over me, whatever vampiric, teeth that you still had in me that may have been extracting energy from me, all of that has to get cut off because now I need to do my thing, okay? And so that's what that post was, the Breaking the Bind post. That's what that was about, right? Kind of mourning the loss of a relationship, but really what that loss of the relationship triggered was more going back and dealing with all of the pain, all of the trauma, all of the drama that I had experienced over the 20 years prior. Because those 20 years in California, folks, all of the shit that was thrown at me, I couldn't react to it with emotions because I had to keep going. You put your emotions to the side when you're still fighting, right? When you're still in the trenches, when you're still fighting the mind war, the emotions and all that stuff have to go to the side. You don't get to deal with them. You don't get to process them because you still have to fight. You're still in danger every day. But once you step back from it, then you get the time to process the trauma and the drama that you lived through. And that's really what happened. The breakup was the spark that allowed me to process 20, 30, 40 years of events. I haven't had a traumatic or very dramatic life, but there have been events in my life that have been very stressful and very difficult, caused a lot of pain that I just hadn't dealt with. And that was the spark, the breakup, which then led me to starting my magical practices. Again, the self-help. That's what we're doing here in the Mind War. Whether it's the Gateway Experience tapes or the ceremonial magic, it's all about self-help and transformation. And I'm so excited to share this story with you. And as always, I appreciate you being here, folks. And remember, harden your hearts and open your minds, because this is Mind War.